On a quiet morning in Fulham, London, the unthinkable happened. Jill Dando, the beloved British television presenter, lay lifeless on her doorstep. She had been shot at close range. The news of her murder sent shockwaves across the nation. The brutality of the crime only amplified the sense of shock. The outpouring of grief was immediate and immense. Flowers and tributes piled up outside her home. Dando's funeral was a somber affair, with thousands lining the streets. The service was broadcast live, allowing the nation to mourn together. In the wake of her death, questions lingered. Who would want to harm Jill Dando? The police launched a massive investigation. The nation held its breath, hoping for answers. Jill Dando's journey to becoming a household name was one of dedication and talent. Her career began in her hometown of Weston-super-Mare as a trainee reporter. Dando's talent was evident from the start. Her passion led her to the BBC in 1985. By the late 1980s, Jill Dando was ready for a bigger stage. In 1995, Jill Dando joined the BBC's Crime Watch. The show reconstructed major unsolved crimes, a perfect fit for Dando's empathy and authority. Dando's warmth and compassion shone through as she presented the stories of victims. Crime Watch, under Dando's co-presentation, became essential viewing. Her work on Crime Watch wasn't without its risks. Beyond Crime Watch, Jill Dando's career flourished. She graced the screens of numerous BBC programs. Dando's personal life was also blossoming. In January 1999, the couple announced their engagement. Tragically, on April 26, 1999, Jill Dando's life was cut brutally short. The morning of April 26, 1999, began like any other for Jill Dando. She left the Chiswick home she shared with her fiancé and drove to her house in Fulham. As she turned onto Gowan Avenue, there was no indication that anything was amiss. At approximately 11:30 a.m., Dando pulled up outside her home. In a heartbeat, everything changed. As Dando reached her front door, a man emerged from the shadows and grabbed her. The assailant forced her to the ground, pressing a 9mm pistol to her head. A single shot rang out, echoing through the quiet street. 14 agonizing minutes passed before a neighbor stumbled upon Dando's body. The scene that greeted her was horrific. The arrival of police and paramedics did little to change the grim reality. Dando was pronounced dead on arrival at 1:03 p.m. As investigators swarmed the scene, witnesses began to come forward. Their accounts painted a chilling picture of the events leading up to Dando's murder. CCTV footage captured a blue Range Rover speeding away from the scene. The Metropolitan Police launched a full-scale investigation, codenamed Operation Oxborough. The scope of the investigation was enormous. The pressure on the detectives was immense. The nation demanded answers. Detectives meticulously pieced together the movements of individuals connected to the case. The police hoped that someone might recognize the distinctive car and come forward with information. The public, desperate to see justice for Jill Dando, flooded the police with information. The Crime Watch program dedicated an entire episode to her murder. Hundreds of calls poured in, offering potential clues. The police had to contend with the downside of widespread attention. They were determined to build a solid case. The lack of a clear suspect fueled a frenzy of speculation. Theories abounded, ranging from plausible to outlandish. Was Dando targeted because of her work on Crime Watch? Some speculated that Dando's personal life held the key to her murder. The intense media interest only made the investigators' task more difficult. The Jill Dando murder case became a media sensation. Newspapers dedicated pages of coverage to the investigation. The public's appetite for information seemed insatiable. The media attention had a double-edged effect on the investigation. The nation demanded justice for Jill Dando, and the pressure was on to deliver. Section 1. A name emerges. As months passed, the investigation into Jill Dando's murder seemed to be making little headway. The public grew impatient. The media began to question the effectiveness of the investigation. Amidst this pressure, a name emerged: Barry George. George lived near Dando's home and had a history of minor offenses. He was known for his peculiar behavior. He fantasized about celebrities and adopted the stage name of Gary Glitter. He had been arrested for impersonating a police officer. Initially, George's name was just one among thousands. A tip flagged him as mentally unstable. The police had not immediately acted on this lead. Almost a year later, detectives took a closer look at Barry George. The investigation needed a new direction. George started to fit the profile of a potential suspect. Section 2. A troubled past. As detectives delved deeper into Barry George's background, they uncovered a history of mental instability and a disturbing pattern of behavior. George, it transpired, had been diagnosed with various mental health conditions, including epilepsy, schizophrenia, and Asperger's syndrome. He had spent time in psychiatric hospitals and had a history of failing to comply with medication regimes. Interviews with those who knew George painted a picture of a deeply troubled individual. Neighbors described him as a loner, often seen lurking in the streets around his home, muttering to himself. Former classmates recalled his awkwardness and his tendency to fantasize about fame and notoriety. Most disturbingly, George had a history of violence against women. He had been convicted of attempted rape and indecent assault in the early 1980s, and had been accused of stalking and harassing several women in the years leading up to Dando's murder. These incidents, though unrelated to Dando, revealed a capacity for aggression and a dangerous obsession with women. The emerging picture of Barry George was that of an individual teetering on the edge of sanity, prone to delusions of grandeur and prone to violent outbursts. While this did not necessarily make him a murderer, it certainly placed him within the realm of individuals capable of such a heinous act. The police, sensing they might be closing in on Dando's killer, stepped up their surveillance of George, hoping to catch him in a lie or to uncover further evidence linking him to the crime. Section 3. The forensic link. A breakthrough came from a microscopic particle found in Barry George's coat. The coat, seized during a search, was analyzed for evidence.
The particle matched firearms residue from the 9mm handgun used to kill Jill Dando.
This discovery was a major development. It placed George near a gun of the same type used in the murder. The prosecution argued the residue and George's history indicated guilt. The defense challenged the residue's reliability, suggesting contamination. They argued the particle's presence didn't prove George fired a gun. The forensic link was significant but ambiguous. Expert opinions on the evidence's significance conflicted in George's trial. The trial of Barry George for the murder of Jill Dando began in May 2001 at the Old Bailey. The prosecution, led by John Bevan QC, focused on George's erratic behavior and a microscopic particle of firearms residue found in his coat pocket. Bevan portrayed George as a fantasist, obsessed with celebrities and prone to violent outbursts. He argued that George, fixated on Dando's fame, had stalked and gunned her down. Witnesses testified to George's strange behavior and his habit of lurking near Dando's home. The defense, led by Michael Mansfield QC, argued George was wrongly accused, highlighting his mental health issues. They claimed the case was circumstantial and questioned the reliability of the firearms residue evidence. After deliberating for 5 days, the jury found George guilty. On July 2, 2001, Barry George was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict was met with mixed reactions. Following his conviction, Barry George continued to maintain his innocence. His legal team, believing a miscarriage of justice had occurred, launched a series of appeals. Their efforts focused on the reliability of the firearms residue evidence, arguing that the single microscopic particle found in George's coat pocket was insufficient to prove his guilt beyond reasonable doubt. In 2002, George's first appeal was dismissed. The Court of Appeal, while acknowledging that the firearms residue evidence was not as strong as it could have been, ruled that the jury's verdict was safe. The judges maintained that the other circumstantial evidence presented at trial, including George's behavior and his proximity to the crime scene, was sufficient to uphold the conviction. Despite this setback, George's legal team persisted. They commissioned new scientific analysis of the firearms residue, hoping to cast doubt on its significance. They also continued to investigate other potential leads, determined to uncover any information that might clear George's name. Their efforts were not in vain. As the years passed, doubts about George's conviction grew. The lack of a clear motive, the reliance on circumstantial evidence, and the persistent questions surrounding the firearms residue evidence fueled a growing sense that justice may not have been served. The media, which had initially presented George's guilt as a foregone conclusion, began to publish articles questioning the safety of his conviction. In 2007, after years of campaigning by George's legal team and growing public unease about the case, the Criminal Cases Review Commission referred George's conviction back to the Court of Appeal. The CCRC concluded there was a real possibility that George's conviction was unsafe. The Court of Appeal reviewed the new evidence and quashed George's conviction. They ruled the firearms residue evidence was fundamentally flawed. The court ordered a retrial, giving Barry George a chance to clear his name. This time, the jury reached a unanimous verdict, not guilty. After 8 years in prison, Barry George was a free man. The acquittal of Barry George in 2008 brought an end to a long and controversial chapter in British legal history. However, it did little to ease the pain felt by those who knew and loved Jill Dando. The question that had haunted the nation for nearly a decade remained unanswered. Who killed Jill Dando, and why? The passage of time has done little to dim the mystery surrounding Dando's murder. Despite numerous theories and countless hours of police work, the case remains unsolved. The lack of a clear motive, the absence of any direct evidence linking a suspect to the crime, and the enduring questions surrounding the initial investigation have turned Dando's murder into one of Britain's most perplexing unsolved crimes. Over the years, various theories have emerged, each offering a possible explanation for Dando's murder. Some have pointed to her work on Crime Watch, speculating that she may have been targeted by a criminal seeking revenge. Others have suggested a link to organized crime, suggesting that Dando may have unwittingly crossed paths with a dangerous individual. Still, others have pointed to potential motives stemming from her personal life, though no concrete evidence has ever emerged to support these claims. The Metropolitan Police have maintained that the investigation into Dando's murder remains open. They have conducted periodic reviews of the case, utilizing advances in forensic technology and investigative techniques in the hope of uncovering new leads. However, despite their efforts, the identity of Jill Dando's killer remains elusive. The murder of Jill Dando sent shockwaves through British society. It was a stark reminder that even those in the public eye, those who brought light and hope into people's lives, were not immune to the darkness that lurked in the shadows. Dando's death shattered the illusion of safety and left an enduring sense of loss. Despite the tragedy of her untimely death, Jill Dando's legacy endures. She is remembered not only for her warmth, her infectious smile, and her dedication to her craft, but also for the impact she had on the lives of countless people. Her work on Crime Watch helped bring numerous criminals to justice, providing closure and a sense of justice for victims and their families. Dando's murder also had a profound impact on British crime journalism. It highlighted the risks associated with reporting on crime and the potential dangers faced by those who dared to confront the darker side of human nature. In the wake of her death, security measures for journalists, particularly those involved in crime reporting, were significantly enhanced. Jill Dando's murder remains a tragic and unsolved mystery. However, her memory lives on, not only in the annals of British television history, but also in the hearts of those who were touched by her kindness, her professionalism, and her unwavering commitment to justice.